So by now, if you've been watching my channel for a little bit, you know how I operate. I like to go digging in search for information. And just recently, we marked another birthday for Batman Arkham Origins. I think it's somewhere around 8 years or something like that, or 5 years. I can't remember. I saw somebody mark it on Twitter and I was quite, curious. And so I said, you know what, let me go back to some of these interviews that I used to peruse around with when we were still digging for scraps as to what was going to be released by Warner Bros. Games Montreal. I mean, we happened to find out it was Gotham Knights, but you know what I mean. I had to run around the internet, watch some old developer interviews, and it was quite interesting to see the take that the development of Arkham Origins took in the time. So in this video, we're going to jump in and talk about it. So welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. If at any time you enjoy the content or want to show some support, you can hit the like button or even a dislike button to let me know that I can make my content better, and leave a comment at the end of the video as to your thoughts about what we're discussing. So Batman Arkham Origins. Well, and on this computer, I don't have any pure Arkham Origins footage, so I apologize for using Arkham Origins Blackgate footage, which is also a decent game, but I guess that's what we have for this production. I went back and found an interview, a very, very interesting one. It's done by a very small YouTube channel, and I'll go ahead and try to link this channel here for you. And they had a developer interview. It had only 203 views, which is very interesting. And this was like around the E3 2013. I think Arkham Origins was actually in a place where everybody was trying to investigate and see what this game was about. So journalists, press people were sitting down for interviews and asking questions. Even the developers as well were also doing the same thing. Now, at that time, I think the name of the senior producer was Ben Mates or Mattis. I can't remember how you say it, but he was sitting down for a lot of interviews at that time. And there was a critical question that he was asked in this interview that kind of surprised me about his answer. And when the interviewer asked him and said, so what comic was this game actually taken from in terms of one of its plot lines, he went ahead and said that there was really not an original comic line or original story that was existent that they got some of their, story plot lines that they were pursuing in the game from. Instead, he said that it actually came from a brainstorming session that they had. And I thought, man, how do I even react to this? This is pure genius in the way that they actually were able to come up and think about something like that. Which leads me to something that I wanted to point out on this video today in terms of the fact of the creativity of the team at that time that came up with this game. Yes, they got some help from Rocksteady, as we've heard in the past that Rocksteady basically helped them. There's actually a developer interview where one of them said, Rocksteady just basically gave us a lot of the assets that they had, and we just went back and kind of reverse engineered everything and reworked systems and put this game together. So you could tell it was a project where they just wanted them to get a game out there in the Batman Arkham Origin universe and give Rocksteady a little bit more time to come up with whatever it is that they wanted to, come up with, which they came up with Arkham Knights, which I'm genuinely glad they did, because that also turned out to be a solid game. Now, in my estimation, I feel like during that time of Arkham Origins, video games were still in a very interesting place. They had just broken into this, interesting portion of the Xbox 360, PS3 market where there were so many games, there was a lot of competition, and developers really wanted to get their voices heard. That was something that was a major theme in that time. In today's world, nonetheless, things are very different. Information spreads very fast, and if someone like Patrick Redding dares venture says anything about a burger, everybody's going to read Batman or Gotham Knights into that burger. In fact, one other game developer or producer, creative director type that suffered that for years is Ed Boon of Mortal Kombat in the NetherRealm Studios. Ed Boon cannot post a picture of a salad without Mortal Kombat fans asking for a character. So this is something that we get to see over time. So I think just over the period of time, it appears that a lot of developers seem to have relegated into the shadows more and more and have refused to speak more about their video games. In fact, it was in another developer interview that we saw Stephen Hill, who's also one of the big managers at Rocksteady, declared that Rocksteady was done with the Arkham games in terms of Batman. So I'm not surprised that in today's world, everything is shrouded in much more mystery because of the way information flies all over the place in many cases, and how sometimes misinformation, as I said, misinformation. Sometimes information can be misconstrued. That's what I wanted to say, because anything anybody says could be interpreted in all kinds of different ways. ways. So how does this bring us in terms of comparison with what Warner Brothers Games Montreal is doing in the promotion of Gotham Knights? Things are very different. In that scenario, that was in an E3 convention type thing, or when Gamescom was going on. This is where I got to see a lot of those interviews for Arkham Origins. But in today's day and age, as of last year, a lot of those events were canceled. So it appears that we actually were affected very much by the fact that these events were canceled, and Warner Brothers decided to consolidate its own announcements to its own event. So this has, in a sense, kind of reduce the quantity of information that we've gotten. But nonetheless, this is a video that is trying to highlight the accomplishment of Arkham Origins. You see, even though we may have our concerns regarding Arkham Origins, and even though many people may think it's not necessarily a solid game, which I'm sure many of you watching this video don't think that, we think it's an awesome game, we can say that that game provided Warner Brothers Games Montreal an opportunity to go ahead and work on their own game, which right now in production is Gotham Knights. So that was the foundation to prove that that studio really had what it took in terms of development, knowledge, and expertise to deliver a video game to the community. The sad part of all of this is, I think, if things had continued to go according to plan, perhaps Warner Brothers Games Montreal may have been claiming or touting right now that Gotham Knights was their third game. We don't know where the development and the idea and brainstorming or even the incubator side of Gotham Knights kind of started, but it kind of says, you know, if you think about that Damian Wayne game after it got scrapped, what kind of other brainstorming and even idea processes went through the studio? And, you know, obviously, you know, the senior producer at the time of Arkham Origins is no longer there. Even the game director at that time is no longer at the studio. We now have new leadership and new management. But it's interesting to see how all those transitions, how the changes, and even on the corporate side basically affected the studio, and we could not necessarily see what they were all about. Again, you also have to think about this part of things. After Arkham Origins came out, I don't know how much support that guy, remember there was a DLC with Mr. Freeze, but, you know, they also got tapped again by Rocksteady in some capacity to work on some of the DLCs that came out for Arkham Knight. And Arkham Knight was the priority game of that time. It was a game that was launching itself into the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One generation. So I can see how Warner Brothers Games Montreal kind of prioritized that project, and how Warner Brothers as a publisher themselves prioritized that project over anything else. But I guess in terms of the corporate side, as Warner Brothers was trying to maybe find its bearing, or as management and leadership was changing, they basically found themselves in a situation where they had to scrap that Damian Wayne project. If you even look at the cinematic side, because of their mergers with AT&T and all of these things, it's affected a lot of other franchises. The Snyder Cut has also been a victim in a sense, but seems to be a victim that is no longer a victim because of how well or decently he did. Some people said he didn't do so well or whatever, but hey, there are all kinds of other TV shows and stuff that are doing crappier than the Snyder Cut that are still getting renewal of seasons. So why not pursue that universe now that you've actually resonated with at least a portion of your community? And who knows, maybe they may bring more people in. So I hope that Warner Brothers Games Montreal can take that lesson very close to heart and find what resonates with their community, whether they're taking it from a comic book or whether they're doing some additions or whether they're doing some modifications to already existing storylines, but at least make sure that they can resonate with their community, because Batman Arkham Origins did resonate with its community. I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Batman Arkham Origins, one of our favorite games. Some people may or may not like it, but I understand. Do you think it's a game that can serve as a model for what Gotham Knights is planning to do in the near future? Thanks so much for watching the video. Appreciate you guys so much. Peace out.